So welcome back. We now try to work with variables now that we understand how we declare variables. So variables are really powerful because we can store stuff in there and then we can perform different tasks with them. We can print them out like we already did. We can change the value. We can do calculations with that. We can, for example, calculate something. So let's try this. First of all, we need a variable with some number. So we need, sorry that the mouse is here, a variable with some number. For example, let's call it some number because I'm really creative today. And this some number will be 13. Okay. So far, no error, worked. And now, what do we want to do? Let's add the other variable we already have, like my variable. And my variable should be 42. I guess, yeah, my variable is 42. To some number. Yeah, let's do that. How do we do that? So we basically say, let's take a new variable we define as my result and say that equals my variable plus some number. So what that should do is take the value of my variable, add the value of some number to it, and store that in the new variable, my result. And we can check if that's correct, again, by the print function, if we print my result. So let's check that. 55, and we remember this was 42, this was 13. So 42 plus 13 equals 55. That's correct. Now we did it by doing using different variables to achieve this. So we had a variable for the result, we had a variable for the first part of the addition and the second part of the addition. So my variable and some number. We could do this as well by only using one of those. So directly adding to a variable is possible by, for example, saying my result equals my variable, which is still 42 plus 2. And now that should be 44. And we can print that as well. My result. And look. So we get at first the 55 from here and then the 44 works. And now we can do a step even further. We can add a number on the same variable we use. So we can, for example, directly add a number on the same variable. Some number equals then the old value of some number plus 4. Some number 13 currently, and what we do here is we say the current value, as we can see already in Colab, 13 of some number, we add 4 to that and override then the variable with that calculation. So now we store in some number 13 plus 4. And if we then print some number, it should now be 13 plus 4 equals 17. And to be really sure that there's no magic happening here, we print it before and afterwards. So here it should still be 13 because that is before the calculation happens. Then the calculation happens and afterwards it should be 17. So let's try that. 13, 17 works. And now the last interesting part. we can also combine strings. And even with numbers. Let's look at that. Well, for example, we want to print the result of our calculation of our first calculation. So this is my result 1, this is my result 2, and this is okay. The result of a first calculation is, and then we put in a double point, and then we put in a space. Really, we want to, so that whatever happens afterwards will have a space in between. And now we add, for example, my result to it. Which is called my result. If we do that, we then should usually have printed the result of our first calculation is whatever the result, whatever is standing in my result. Problem is, we cannot connect strings with numbers, with integers or floats or whatever. To do that, we have to transfer the integer value, which is in the variable my result, because that's a number, and a whole number, so a natural number, is an integer, and a decimal number is a float. In that case, we have 13. This is a natural number without decimals, so that's an integer. If we want to combine an integer with a string with an integer, that doesn't work, so we have to transfer that integer to a string as well. And this is quite easy. There's a predefined function which is just called str for string, brackets opened, brackets closed, and now my result variable will be a string as well. And if we print it, we see the result of our first calculation is 44. And now we can add the other thing as well. So we can say, again, a string, space, because we need a space in between, or even we could add a comma, so we have a good differentiation between those, and say, and the result of our second calculation is double point base plus str, my result 2, this is my result 1, sorry for that, and we make that the result of our first calculation is 55 and the result of our second calculation is 44. There you go, there you have it. This is how it works. And now again, an exercise for you. I would like you to calculate how many seconds there are in a year, store it in a variable, and print how many seconds there are in 3 years. So there are several steps involved. First of all, define a variable and store to that how many seconds there are in a year. You could look it up in the internet, or you can calculate it on your own by a bit of thinking, because you have so many days in a year, so many hours in a day, so many minutes in an hour, so many seconds in a minute. Then you start in the variable. Then you have to print how many seconds there are in 3 years. Now you calculated what 1 year is, you get there. Have fun, I'll show you the solution afterwards.